What would it feel like to trust ourselves fully on and off the table? To know that no matter what happens, each hand or each session, everything is working out for us. To embrace this level of trust, we must first let go of expectations and detach from outcomes as a reflection of our worthiness. The victories will come and go, and the losses are not actually losses. They are simply opportunities to dig deeper and discover how, when, and why we get out of alignment. All outcomes present the same opportunity: to be fully responsible for our results. With 100% responsibility comes the unshakable trust and self-confidence you are looking for. So the question is, how much responsibility are you willing to take? Today we're playing the 10-20 game at the Wynn. One thing that we want to pay attention to as we move up in stakes is what are our opponents doing and why? Meaning, what is their overall comfort zone for their strategy and their action at the table? And one distinction we can make that alludes to that is distinguishing between faux aggression and actual aggression. Regs, as they are affectionately called, have programmed and trained themselves to be aggressive in certain action, say 3 or 4 betting pre-flop. But ultimately, when it comes to risking their entire stack, they may be very attached to their stack. So it's important to distinguish the capabilities of your opponent in terms of where are they being aggressive and why are they being aggressive, and ultimately where is the edge of their comfort zone, because that's going to tell you exactly how to play your own strategy against them. And so what we're going to see in this vlog is, even though the players seem more capable on the surface than, say, the 2-5 game, because they're opening 3-betting and 4-betting a little bit wider, ultimately this is a dead money game, and the players are not here to risk their stack, especially against other regs with marginal hands. They're looking for the safe, comfortable, standard spots to get their money in, ultimately so that they can avoid the voice of judgment for making a bad play. And so the way that we have the biggest comfort zone at the table is because we check in with ourselves before the hand and check in with the thoughts and feelings that we're experiencing, and ultimately we give ourselves permission to be okay with any outcome, and that allows us to trust ourselves fully in the moment. So the first hand I get is ace jack of clubs under the gun. The game is 6-handed, it's all regs, and so far the game is playing very safe and snug. Haven't seen any 3-betting so far. And when I opened this, my intention was to get some players to basically just call to smash, where we know they're not going to be fighting for pots, so we can barrel them off. I definitely at this point was not ready to play a big pot or to start fighting for pots. So when I get 3-bet here by one of the Wynn regulars, who I know to be particularly sticky and fighty at times, this is just an easy let go for me. There's nothing that told me like, okay, he's going to be folding here, or this is a spot for us to take. If I don't have a good reason to take a spot, I'm not going to take it. And so we are really like the hawk when we're at the table. The hawk strikes when he's ready to strike. He strikes on his own terms. He doesn't strike on anyone else's terms. We're going to make folds and calls and raises in non-standard ways, and it's ultimately going to be when we are ready to do it and when we have a good reason to do it. And in this next hand, we're going to see exactly that. This hand shows us why the opponent and his intention matters so much more than our cards. So this is a hand that happened just before I started the camera. So we see the reg across the table open the button to 50. And when he opened, I saw that he was flat and detached from his hand. He had no excitement. So I chose to 3-bet to 200. And he promptly 4-bets me to 550. And his energy didn't change at all. He stayed flat. He had no excitement. He didn't have any fight energy to him. And so this just told me, like, okay, this is one of those programmed, I 4-bet here because I'm supposed to type of hands, but ultimately he's not willing to go any further. So we 5-bet to 1550. He has a $4,000 stack and he folds. And so this is an example of why our cards don't matter so much as our intention and the opponent's intention. And the timing of our action matters so much more than the cards that we hold. So we pick up 550 in dead money for facilitating our opponent's intention, which even though he's telling us he has a strong hand by four betting, we can see based on his behavior that he's wanting to play it safe. So we facilitate that intention and pick up $550. And so as the last hand showed us the results that we get when we are fully present with our own intention and with our opponent's intention, this hand is going to show the exact opposite. This hand shows us what happens when we don't check in with ourselves and we don't acknowledge our own comfort zone or what we are feeling and experiencing. And we're going to see what happens. So the same opponent who we know is here to simply play it safe and to protect his stack opens to 50. And we get a hand that could go either way, either three betting here or just flatting. And so this is an opponent that we know we have no implied odds, meaning he's not going to give us his money when we flop a set. The value that we have in this hand is by playing it for dead money because either eights is going to be the best hand post flop, or we're going to be able to barrel him off on lots of overcard boards. So when we choose to flat pre-flop, we are not acknowledging our own need to play it safe. And so what happens here is we take the safe route throughout the rest of the hand. On the flop, we donk. On the turn, we donk again, because what happened was on the flop, I went with the first impulsive thought that I got, which is, oh my God, I saw him disconnect from the board and therefore he doesn't have a hand, which is just what I wanted to happen. And that's the wanting to play it safe, speaking through the thoughts that I'm choosing in the moment. So we end up donking the flop and donking the turn. And then after the turn, once he calls twice, I go, oh my God, he's actually much more settled than I thought. And he's telling me he's basically comfortable calling flop and turn. And we just, this is a small pot. We don't have the leverage to really be barreling him off here because our line and our hand looks pretty assy. So we check the river and he checks back and he has a jack seven of hearts. And so this tells us that if we had gone ahead and stepped outside our comfort zone and through our resistance and three bet and then barreled him off, he's never calling off with jack seven on that board, even if it's jack high. So this is what happens when we don't step through our resistance and we play it safe. So the next hand is a hand where it folds to us in the small blind. This is a 10-20-20 format, so there's $40 of dead money from the big blind in there. And the big blind is a younger Asian woman who's basically been folding every hand since she got here. It seems obvious to me that she's playing above her limit. She's probably like a 5-10 and a 2-5 reg. And so it's just going to be very hard for her to wake up with a hand here where she can stand pressure. So this is any two card spot for us. We're just going to open here. And if she sees a flop, we're going to be connecting with her post flop, but likely barreling her off many runouts. So we pick up $40 here. So the next hand we get is pocket kings in the big blind. Our Wynn regular friend is going to open 60 in this small blind. And admittedly, what didn't work for me in this hand was I didn't take my time to connect with him. I got excited seeing kings, and I went with the thought of, okay, he's going to be calling here to smash, and he's a fighter, and he's not going to give up. But just because we've seen him fight in the past doesn't mean he's doing that every hand. So we still get to connect with him and with any of our opponents, especially when we get big hands, because that's the time when our excitement can really take hold and have us do things based on the emotion rather than what's actually happening in the present moment. So I was particularly excited that I enrolled the table in playing $100 double board PLO bomb pots. We do a 3K cap. And I really love the double board bomb pots because this is a game that people don't really have experience with. And people are making lots and lots of mistakes. And we're going to see one of those mistakes here. I'm not going to get too much into the strategy of playing the bomb pots because it's my little secret for now. But in general, what we're doing is we're going for the scoop. And sometimes that might mean that we got to fold a lot until we find a spot that's like very favorable for us. But ultimately, we just want to be avoiding the spots where we're likely to get scooped or where our hand could be dominated. And because it's PLO, we are much more likely to be dominated than we think we are. So here I get ace deuce queen six, and you see that we flop a boat on the bottom board and top pair good kicker on the top board. Now on the top board, top pair good kicker is whatever, but since it's six-handed and since we have a boat on the bottom board, it's very unlikely that we're getting scooped. We'd have to be getting scooped by pocket sixes and ace 10. So 6 ace 10 or 6 ace 8. And this is a shorthanded game. There's like 6 players in there. So we are going to bet the flop specifically for protection because our boat is vulnerable. And we get one caller, and this is the lady to our left. And yeah, what we're going to see at the showdown is she's basically chasing a draw, and she's chasing a draw on a board that is dead. So we get 200 from her on the flop, and we get 600 from her on the turn. And my experience was just that she had been waiting to play a pot. And like I said, in PLO, we can definitely overestimate the hand values if we are like used to be playing no limit. So she just convinced herself to call 2 streets here. And so on the river, we're going to improve to 2 pair on the top board. And the bottom board, we now lose to 7 deuce. But because we have a really good backup hand, 2 pair on the top and a boat on the bottom, it's very unlikely for us to get scooped. She would have to have a very specific combination to scoop us. And because she didn't fast play it, we know that it's likely she doesn't have that great a hand. Now, what didn't work was that I didn't connect to her at all throughout the hand. If I did, I would have seen the air go out of the balloon on the river card. She would have been disappointed and deflated because her draw didn't improve. So when I bet 2K here on the river, that was my excitement betting. I have a big hand and I want her, likely a weak player who doesn't know how to play PLO, to be calling and me scooping. And ultimately she folds because she was chasing a draw. And we give her a little courtesy show here just to make sure she's having fun playing PLO and to show her I had a good hand. But ultimately, what didn't work is I didn't connect to her. And she's likely not calling any bet on the river, but based on her energy, we have to make a much smaller bet than what we did. All right, a couple more hands here before the break. We get pocket fours here in the big blind. We flat versus open and a call. And this is just another example of like hands that can be really straightforward to play. We have the tendency to get intentionless with them. And so here, my intention pre-flop was basically just to smash a set. And that's what I did here. But ultimately, we see if our opponent's intention is not to be putting piles of money in, then that intention doesn't really work for us strategically in the game. So what happened was I wasn't present when the hand started. I flatted just to smash. I ended up smashing, but our villain didn't connect at all. And because I wasn't connected to him in the hand, I just went for like a check raise because, oh my God, I got to start getting money in. And if I had connected to him, I would have realized that he was flat, deflated, disconnected, and he didn't show any interest. So this would have been a good opportunity to flat and let the other player maybe come in or maybe make a play. But we can see that it doesn't work when I don't connect. All right, and one final hand before the break. We open ace queen of diamonds under the gun, and we get called by both blinds. Go to a flop of 9-5 deuce, and correctly adjusting from last hand, which cued me into the fact that I wasn't fully present, I connect to both players here. I see that both are flat and disconnected, and I know that my instinct tendency was to want to play it safe and just check back. But we step through our resistance and we go ahead and make a $120 bet and get called by the small blind. And on the 10 of hearts turn, which looks like a bad card for us, but again, it only matters based on how our opponent relates to that card. So we see no improvement from him. We see that his energy's flat and he's disconnected. And we see that he's telling us that he has a hand and that he's interested in the pot. So that means that he just doesn't have anything that he's willing to fight for. And we make a correct double barrel and we pick up some dead money. And so now we're headed off to a break. And we could see just based on how he played that there are some things that are out of alignment for us in this first half of the session. So we get to go on a break, take responsibility and accountability for them, and come back fully intentional, present, and in alignment. All right, so we are back fully aligned and ready to play. Again, I can't stress enough the importance of taking breaks and really checking in with what's working and what's not working, because if you're off 1 degree one way or the other in terms of what your intention is at the table, it has a profound effect on your results. So really taking that time to check in with what's working and what's not working is the key to creating the results that you want. So we get ace queen here in small blind. We raise it up to 80, and we're going to get called by the big blind, who is a Regish player on the tighter side, who is of note covering his face and his mouth with his hoodie. And we're just going to see in this hand that that doesn't really help hide anything. So we get a flop of 10-5-4, 2 clubs, and the first thing I observe is that he has no real energy jump and no excitement jump when this flop hits. So we're going to go ahead and c-bet 150. We expect him to continue with the vast majority of his range. Blind versus blind, he could be floating pretty wide. He has a lot of hands that can connect in some way, shape, or form with this flop, and he's going to be floating with, backdoor draws and stuff like that. So back to his behavior. Let's observe his behavior closely here when he calls. We ask, what does he want me to believe? Is he saying, I'm strong, I have a hand, slow down? Or is he saying, I'm weak, I don't have a hand, keep betting? Which one do you think it is? Rewind and rewatch this as much as you need to and really connect with his behavior. Over 50% of communication is nonverbal. And so without saying it, he's saying it if we're really tuned into him. So based on what we saw on the flop, no excitement, no energy jump, we can successfully rule out the flush draw. And then based on his behavior that we saw when he called, he's saying, hey, I have a hand, I'm comfortable, slow down. And so what that means is I don't have a hand and I'm not comfortable. And the very last thing we do is check in with ourselves and ask, what resistance am I experiencing right now? And in the moment, I was definitely hearing thoughts of wanting to play it safe and not barrel, because yada, 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 story, story, story. I don't have any blockers. What if I'm wrong in what I saw? I could find a better spot. Whatever the story is, it comes in different forms, but ultimately it's the same thing. I want to play it safe. So when we hear that, we know that's our cue to step through resistance. And based on what we saw behavior-wise, we know that he doesn't have a hand where he can call off. So we fire a turn bet here at 500, and although we see him peacocking and hemming and hawing a little bit, we know he has a hand that just can't stand any pressure. And once again, our break really helped us because we saw what didn't work and that it's not being present and not being connected to the opponent. So here we correctly are zoned in. We know that their intention is to be playing it safe. So ours is to step through resistance and connect with them. And when we do that, things work out for us. And so we're going to play one last hand here. We get ace, queen of spades on the button. We're going to bump it up to 50. As you can see in the background, the game is breaking as we speak. So this is going to be the last hand. We open the button. We get called by the big blind, who, as you can see, is on his phone. And as we've observed so far, everybody's playing it safe. Nobody's trying to play big pots. I don't even remember what this flop was, but he checks. We connect with him. We see that he's disconnected. He's flat, and he's not attached to the hand. So we c-bet. He folds, and we take it down. And so we had a nice little $2,200 win here. And the big thing we learned today is the importance of being present and settled and ready to play at the start of every hand. And we can see that when we're not, things don't work out for us. And when we do, things go our way. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this content, please like, comment, share. I really appreciate all the positive comments so far. The feedback has been amazing, and I'm looking forward to vlog number 3. Thank you.